Okay, hello everyone. Let's start. Let me quickly share my screen. So first topic will be the metrics, and then we will move to the second topic of screen two. Yeah. Okay. Before starting this, what are the different metrics you're already aware of or you're already using with your team? Anyone can tell me?
Not with the team, but I little read about these things before.
Okay.
That's
So
how I know.
I will show you the very basic metrics what we are using, and those are very pretty much common in throughout the organizations. And then we will talk about if any specific metrics you want to be learn or understand. We can also do that during our Q&A. See, when you're working as a Scrum Master or a product owner or a QA manager, whatever is it, metrics is very important. What is the agenda? What is the goal of the metrics? That we have to understand. Few of the companies, few of the leaders, their thought process is metrics is to just get the information how the team is performing and then how they can improve. That is not the primary goal of the metrics. The primary goal of the metrics is to collect the data, and on the basis of data you will figure out where you need improvements, where you can create some action items. So that's the main agenda, and with the help of your past performance that comes in the different metrics, you can take an actions and then you can accordingly commit. So there are two kind of a metrics we are talking about. The first thing is the team metrics, the metrics which is really important for any Scrum team. These metrics are not equally important when you are presenting in with the leadership. We are talking about the sharing the metrics. Few of the metrics you can use, but there are other additional metrics which generally important when you are showcasing your team performance and team's outcome with your leadership. So we'll talk about on both the parts. The first metrics, which is very common, that is you can see in the screen, is a velocity. Can anyone tell me like what is velocity and how is it important for a Scrum team? I hope most of you are already using, right? What is the use of
can you get a velocity from a Kanban board?
See that you can get it if you are having some fixed timelines. Like generally when we are working in the Kanban, we will say we will take the 15 days team's outcome or monthly team outcomes. So what you can do is you can fix the duration, either it's a 15 days or a month, and then you will see, like if I'm talking about the monthly, in the January month, what is the team's deliverables? Then in February month, what is the team's deliverables? And then once you have 3 months of data, 4 months of data, you can say this is the team's velocity, how much they are delivering every month. And according to that, you can predict your upcoming work as well. But in Kanban, because most of the things are uncertain, so that velocity is not that much relevant. So even if you are getting the data, that's only for the namesake. You will not create any real action items for the Kanban team.
Okay.
Mukesh, yes.
Yeah. So my current project, it's not a Kanban, but still they are using this sprint planning. But here, what is happening is like there are continuous tickets will be there. So in continuous like work, how they are implementing this sprint thing? Because Kanban I can understand, but a sprint there should be a fixed number of tickets. What I think.
See, you can still do that. There, I told you, right? There are organizations who are modified the Scrum and they are calling it a Scrum Bun, not a Kanban. So what they have a sprint of 2 weeks, but even that sprint of 2 weeks, they are free to change the scope anytime of the sprint. They will move out, they will move in. So they are using a Kanban approach in a sprint cycle. They're calling it a Scrum Bun. Generally, there is no concept like that, but people are modified according to themselves and they're doing. Now, in your case, where your team is working in a sprint cycle, but they are changing they're picking items on or changing the priority on daily basis or alternate days. How this velocity will help? Now you know your team's velocity 20 story points. That means they can only deliver 20 story points during those 2 weeks. Now, if your team is taking more work, what they will do is they know if they are taking a 5-pointer and they already have 20 story points, that means they have to move out something. So before taking any new work, they have to deprioritize something from their committed work. So that's how the velocity helps. Okay, what number they can do that. So they know our average velocity is 20. If a new work comes and the estimate of the new work is 5 story points, we will equally deprioritize something and we will take it. So that's how the velocity helps in your case. You can see this velocity, right? There are a couple of numbers. So these numbers are like 68.5, 55%. These are every sprint, how many story points they're delivering. And you can see there is a trend, right? You will see there is first 3, they are almost, when this is the average of last 6. So the average is 56. You can see they are doing very great. I mean, more than their average they're delivering. Here you can see they are delivering below their average. Their average is 56. They're delivering 45, 39, and 50. Now, how this data help us? This data, when you see there is a dip in a sprint, now you will use this as a retrospective item. Like, what are the reasons behind this dip? Why the team is only committed 45? Sometimes the reasons are very genuine, and if you have these kind of scenarios, so what we learn if there is some genuine reasons. So when we have these kind of similar situations in the future, we'll make sure we will commit less. I will give you an example. Let's say you can see, let's say take this. This is in a month of December and end of December, where most of people have their leave plans and holiday plans and something. Now, when you're doing a capacity planning, you also assume the team's velocity is 56. We can take at least, let's say 50, because there is a holidays, we will take 50. But team is only delivered 45 and or 40. So when next time the similar situation happen, when you have these kind of long leaves and holidays in your sprint, you will be acting more consciously. You will say, last time when we have the similar situations, we delivered very less. So it's better if we are committing less. So these kind of learnings we are taking. This is the one scenario. There could be a second scenario where the team is, you can see here, is less. Again, it's a lesser than the previous one. So if this is a reason of where the team, most of the team members are on leave, then why there is a reason why there is another dip. So you have to again retrospect after the sprint why we delivered even lesser than this. This is the first 2 weeks of the January or something, and here could be the reason is something else. Your two team members are still out of office and they are still not continue after the holiday break. But you assume when you do the sprint planning, like, we will have the more capacity and people are coming back, we will deliver more than what is our average, and that's another reason. Third reason is, if this is a some kind of a complex scenario, the complex stories where you're working. So your team says, we know this complex feature or this complex stories will take like 10 story points or 15 story points, and we can easily finish in the one sprint. But when they actually start working on the development, then they realize it's more complex. They need some information from the third party. They need involvement from the more architects of the organizations or some more experienced team members. They need some more information from the business, from subject matter expert. So that could be another reason they have a dip. Now, again, suppose that's the reason you retrospect when you did the planning of the next sprint, you get almost some plans, some actions. Okay, we will arrange some SMEs, we will arrange some sessions to brainstorm that particular feature. But the implementation of all these things will also take time, and that could be your reason. So when you know what is the reason behind these dips, what actions you are taking, don't assume you will get a better result in the next upcoming sprint. Sometimes the implementation of those action items also take time, and that could be the reason where you will see here there is 2 dip, and then after that they are, I mean, the third sprint they are delivering more than last two. So that means the complexity is now the team understand the complexity. Now they have a better plan and they are continuously moving. So when you have these kind of a data, you have to be more consciously spend more time in the retrospective, time to debug the reasons. And if there is genuine reason, you have to create an action item accordingly, and then you will see an increase. So that's how we will see the velocity. Now, this average velocity numbers, that this number helps you when you're doing your sprint planning. Like if you have the same number of capacities, what you have in the last 4-5 sprints, accordingly, you can go somewhere near to the, you can commit near to this average velocity. Now, suppose this is the data of your last 6. Now, what will be your next committed number? Definitely, it will not more than 56. It will be less than 56. The reason, for the last 3 sprints, your team is struggling. So instead of committing 56 or more than 56, you will say, okay, it's better if we will commit 50 or 48, so that team will deliver. Second scenario, if it's reverse, if your team is delivering like 90, 90, 90 or 95 or 100% for the last 3 sprints, but your average is still 56, the reason because before those 3 sprints, your team's performance is very bad. But now for the last 3 sprints, the team is delivering very good. But your average is, because it's the average of 6, is lesser than that. So what we will do in this case? In this case, we will try to just push the team little hard, or instead of 56, you will say, let's try to deliver 58, or let's try to deliver 60. So those kind of a small push, we can do it when you have constant 100% deliveries for the last 3-4 sprints. So that's how you can help your team to be commit more or improve and utilize this data of the velocity.
I have a question. Okay. First of all, is it okay? It's everybody's happy if the defined story point for a team is 39, and during the sprint, if they had bandwidth and they took another 5 story point, let's just say, okay, so that becomes in a bar more than 100%, right? Because in the beginning they committed 35 and then they added 5 more. Okay, and then next time they struggled, they again planned for 35, they struggled, they only delivered 30, right? Now, by doing retro, we realize that, okay, 35 is the capacity that we can do. Okay, now you just said that if the team is continuously doing 35 as planned, and that's their 100% without any like dip, which is neither higher nor lower, then pushing them to take more tasks will not add a dip next time, because we know that this is the right amount of number that they're comfortable with.
That's
and
very important. No, that should not come from us. That should come from the team itself. The team should say, we are delivering 35 for the last 3 sprints, and now we feel we can take more.
Okay.
We should not push the team. The product owner, Scrum Master should not ask the team to take more. If team members are comfortable, they are saying, now we all are doing the same kind of work for the last 3 months and 4 months. We have a stable team. Now we feel we can take more than 35.
Okay.
If they are comfortable, if they are sure to deliver more than 35, then they will take it. It's not from Scrum Master and from product owner. What Scrum Master will do, they will just, if your team is trying to take more work, you can just use this matrix and they will say, guys, you can't take more work because for the last 3 sprints we are struggling. But if they are delivering 100% for the last 3 sprints, and now your team member says, I think we can take 1 more 2-pointer or 3-pointer, then you can say, yes, you can take it because for the last 3 sprints we are delivering 100%.
And where can I find these kind of team members who will ask for more work?
See, it's not like that. I think that also comes with the maturity of the team.
Sure. Okay.
Right? When you have a more mature team members, they know they have to work on something. They will not think, okay, but that also comes with the experience. You can't expect all your team members have the similar kind of a mindset. Right? But definitely your 1 or 2 team members says, yeah, I think we can take more. But at the same time, you can also get a pushback from the another team members who say, no, it's very struggling for me to deliver what I committed last time. So I don't want to take more work. So it's fine if one of your team member, if he or she is not comfortable, we will not assign more work to them. We will tell them, okay, it's fine. You will just take what you are doing for the last 2-3 sprints. But if there is another team member who they are confident they can take more, let them give the freedom. Let them take the call, and don't expect they will get 100% extent. But even if they committed 3 more extra story points and then they delivered one extra story points, that's a win for us. Instead of 35, if they committed 38 but they delivered 36, that's a win for one more story point. So that's how we can do it. Okay, so this is how we are using this average velocity and this trend of the velocities. This is the number of just this not so much helpful. This is the average of your number of stories, how many number of stories you are taking. So this will not help because sometimes you might have 10 stories where we have one story points, and in the next sprint you might have 3 stories where all the 3 stories have three story point, or one is 5 story points. So the amount of work is same. So this number is not helping, but for some other purpose we will utilize these things where we have like bug counts and stuff, how many bugs team is resolving and stuff. So then we are using this.
What
Now,
is the definition of story point, which is a defined standard story point? Because lately, one story point is equal to 8 hours of a person. That is a wrong thing, I know. But this is how lately people are managing the sprint, by calculating like,
see,
okay, this is the
actually there is
capacity,
no
this is the
relation.
date.
There is no relation between time and between the
Story point.
story points. The reason is story points are relevant estimates. They're not fixed estimates. Okay, but when you're starting the project, you can't expect your team members to be just give you exact relevant estimations. So what, when we are doing an agile transformation and stuff, we will just map with a certain range. We are not saying one story point is equal to 8 hours or one story point is equal to 1 day. Now this is not a best practice, but to get us to reach and to kick start what we are saying, we are just mapping the story point with a certain range where we say one story point is equal to 1 to 2 days. 3 story point is equal to 3 to 5 days. 5 story point is equal to something which you can deliver like in a week or like 7 days. So there is a range. Now this range will help your team to do that. There is a separate session I will take on the story points because it's a very deep dive session to understand and to coach your team on the story points and the relative estimates, how we'll do it right. That also comes with the maturity of your team members, because you might have a senior team member who can deliver the same work in hours, and there is an intern who needs like days to deliver same kind of a work. Then how they both can align on one number, right? So we will not go according to each individual team members. That's why we are calling this relative estimates. So we will create some benchmark stories. Okay, if this is the benchmark of 1, this is the benchmark of 2, this is the benchmark of 3. Every time when we are doing an estimations, we are comparing that new story with these benchmark stories. This new story is equal to one pointer benchmark, or is equal to 2 pointer benchmark, or is it equal to 3 pointer benchmark? When you're doing these kind of comparisons, the maturity of individuals is not relevant. So you can skip that part. Now then everyone knows if they need to change only a font or alignment on a page is like a very small thing. They'll say this is 1 pointer. Now, if they are doing something similar to that on some other page, on some other screens, they know is it equal, the number of the efforts is equal in both the stories, then they will say this new story is 1. But when the new story is equal to or is more than that 1 pointer, then they will move to next. Okay, is it not equal to 1? Is it equal to 3? Is it equal to 5? Where is it this new story is fit equal to which story, and accordingly we'll do this. So there's a whole workshop we are doing. We will definitely do once we're finishing this basic part, right, for the estimation. Okay, this is another one, which is the fluctuations. Now, how is it different with the velocity? This fluctuation help us when we are doing the same planning for the future. you will see there are two trend lines. This trend line says this is the bottom of your average. This is the max what you can take. Here you can see what your team is delivering. So you will see this 121%, 116 and 124, how this comes. This comes from this. Let me just minimize this. You can see this is 121. How this 121 calculated? You know your team's average is 56, but your team delivered 68 in this sprint, right? So here they delivered more than their average. So that's why if you calculate, the 68 is 121% of 56. So that's how this helps. Same, next time they deliver 65, which is 116. Here you can say they deliver 70. This is again 124. But here you can see a dip 45, which is 80% of 56. So what this velocity fluctuation is, when you are doing your sprint planning, at that time, make sure you're not committing more than 120 or lesser than 80. Your next commitment should be always aligned between this and your team's delivery. If your team's delivery is also with this green trend line is always comes between these two lines, that means your team is doing good. But if suddenly here your team is having 124, next time they have only 40, and again in the next time they have 200, then they have 60. That means there is not enough. Like there is something related to the consistency of the team. So if your team's this trend line is going between 80 to 120%, that means the team is going good. There are some small hiccups. Might be someone is going on sick leave or some kind of your team assumes some technical stuff, but when they are actually move into implementation, they realize it's taking more time. So that's why they have a small dip. Or sometimes they estimated a 5-pointer, but they finished that very quickly. That is equal to 2-pointer. So they might assume more as well. So that's why you are getting more percentage. But if it's coming in between this, that means your team is doing good. So that should be the target of a Scrum Masters, to just evaluate how your team is fluctuating in terms of the velocity. Then next is scope change. This is very important one. And why this is very important one for a Scrum Master and for a product owner. Because if your team is working, in a constant way, and when they have very limited scope changes, that means the product owner is spending very good amount of time on the refinement. Your stories is well refined, but sometimes, or your roadmap is also planned very well. But suppose here you can see they delivered 43, but they also, this yellow line says they added, so during those 2 weeks they added 11 additional story points, and then they only deprioritize 2. -2 means they deprioritize 2. So what is the goal of a Scrum Master is, if team committed something and if they are adding more work, then this yellow color and this gray color should be equal. If they're adding 11 story point of work, then they should remove the 11 story point of work as well. Why the team is getting a dip? Because they committed this, but they added this 11 more, but they only deprioritize -2. But if they deprioritize like 10 or 11, then this percentage of delivery will automatically goes to 90 or 100. So that's why scope change is really important. Our goal is, the first goal is there should be minimum addition and minimum removal. But if due to some circumstances or the priority change, if you're adding the work, make sure you're equally removing the same amount of work as well. Like you can see here, the team added 0.5, they also removed 0.5. But here you can see they added 3, they moved 1 out. I mean, this is fine. 1 or 2 story point difference is fine. But here you can see it's huge. And again, they added 8, almost 7.5, but they didn't remove anything. This is good. They added 4.5, but they also removed 3. So these kind of numbers we should expect. This is our priority, but sometimes we can't predict everything is planned. So this number is also good where you're moving, adding something and you're equally moving out. So that's what help you. Now the scope change matrix you can also show to your leadership. How it helps to when you're presenting this to your leadership as well, you can say what kind of a scope changes your team is getting, and that's why your team is delivering the commitment. If your team is behind the commitment, and if you have the scope change matrix, this could be one of the reasons your team is behind the commitment. Now, leadership expecting you to deliver, let's say, the scope which your team defined for the 3 months, but you almost in the end of second month, but your team is only delivered 60% of that scope what you initially committed. Now, definitely leadership asks like why you only delivered 60%, 2 months is already gone. But when you have these kind of metrics and data, you can say the reason why we only delivered 60% because we got lot of scope changes in our initial commitment. And that's why we are unable to deliver. So our backlog is grown. So that's why you will see only 60% of the backlog is delivered. So these kind of metrics are really helpful for the leadership. Now this next metrics, which is average commitment, is comes with this commitment reliability. First, we will talk about this and then we go to the average commitment. Now, what is this commitment reliability? The commitment reliability says what your team is committing on the day one during the sprint planning. Your team says we can commit 35. Now that is your commitment. Now at the end of the sprint, how much of that committed work they delivered? So they committed 35. Now during those 2 weeks, they added 5 more story points. Now they have total 40, but they delivered 35, which is their committed work. So this commitment and liability will be 100% because that additional 5 story points are not the committed work. All right. So that's important part. What your team is committed on day one and what percentage of that committed work they delivered. So we are having this 3 range. If it's below 60, that means your team needs more improvement. If it comes between 60 to 80, that means your team is improving and they need some small actions where you can move. And if your team is delivering more than like 80%, that means your team is doing good. Now this 80% you can change. If suppose like you can see here, constantly they are delivering 88%, you can say now we are raising the bar, we are making 80%. So we will only get the green when your team is delivering more than 80%. So that's how you can just improve the commitment of the team. And this metrics also help to show in front of the leadership, like if your team is committed, are they delivering from that committed work or not? And if they're delivering, what is their commitment delivery rate? So this matrix and this matrix is average of these last 6. So you can see if your this particular team's average commitment is 85, which is a good number. So for last 6 sprints, they are delivering more than 80% of their committed work. You can see there is another team which is only delivering 84. This is 89. So when you have these kind of numbers, that means your team is really doing good. One or two times in a scope of 6 or 10 sprints, if your team is getting red, that's absolutely fine. But if your team is getting constant red, that's an alarm for you to be just deep dive, spend more time on retrospective, try to understand why your team is unable to deliver your committed work. Scope change is a separate thing. Scope change will not impact anything in the committed work. But if the scope change could be the reason of low commitment, because you're committed 35 story points. Now your product owners add 10 more story points, and those 10 more story points are the priority is way higher than those 35. Then definitely you're delivering those 10 and you have some spillovers from the 35. So your commitment and liability is less. But if until you know the reasons why it's less, it's absolutely fine. Until you communicate the same reasons to your leadership, that's absolutely fine. So you will take an action. Next time we will make sure we will not add more work once we start the sprint. We will try to spend more time on the refinement so that our product owners will get The product owner will try to spend more time with the stakeholders. So all those priority work, at least they will figure out before starting the sprint. Or if something comes new, they will make sure if this is not a critical stuff, we will try to commit these kind of a new stuff in the next sprint. So these kind of discussions are important and helping to grow. Then after that, we have a couple of testing metrics, which right now we don't have any data, but we are also using like defect leakage. Every sprint, if your team is having like 4 bugs or 5 bugs from the delivered work, so you will see how's the quality of your team. If it's like less than 10%, 15%, that's absolutely fine. But if your team is continuously having like more than 15 or 20% of defect leakage, that means either your developers are not doing the proper unit testing or your QAs are not doing the right testing if you're finding those bugs after releasing on a certain environment. So those kind of metrics are helping to improve your quality process. So those defect metrics, there are a couple of more QA related, but because those are not relevant to the Scrum, I will not talk about those things. Now there is another important metrics which is really important when you're working in Kanban, and that is this. Can anyone tell me what is this metrics?
Burn down. No.
This is not burn down.
No.
This is cumulative flow diagram, CFD. This is very important when you're working on Kanban kind of a project. Definitely have an advantage on sprint way as well. What this cumulative flow diagram says, this says the health of your backlog. Like how many items you have in the backlog, how many of them are already completed, how many of them are in progress, and how many are still in initial stage. Like, so you can see here, this is in backlog means when you started on this particular date, you have these number of work in the backlog. Slowly, after the time, definitely your backlog grows. You can see this is the growth of your backlog. This is absolutely fine. But when you have a growth of your backlog, you also know what is your delivery. So this green mark is done state. So definitely this is your, this is your initial sprint, you will get your delivery done item is 0. So you will see there are number of backlog items. You start the realization. Realization means the refinement, the grooming of those items. You spend some time, and then this is the in development phase when you start doing the development of the team. And then after like 1 sprint or 2 sprint, you will start doing the delivery. So this is the done. So after 1 sprint, you might get this green line of done. So what is the goal is after the time, if you have a fixed time like 3 months of project or 6 months of a project, you will, your goal is at end of the timeline, this green should be reached at the top. And this light yellow and this blue and red should be reached at the 0. So there should not be any scope. Everything should be done. Or when you have the projects where the timelines are not fixed, your backlog is also continuously growing, which is a common case in case of the Scrum framework, because Scrum is a complex kind of project where we are always having new enhancements and new improvements, but those are not critical one. So what we will do is we will design the release. Okay, after 3 months, we have a release. What we are targeting? Okay, after 3 months, we are targeting at least 20% of our backlog, which is a feature of MVP, should be complete. So you will see this. So that's how this graph help your leadership on your product owner to realize, are we on track or not? If you have only increasing the backlog and your this green part is very less, that means your team is lacking. Either you have to increase your team size, either you have to make sure your timelines are increased, because you cannot achieve this done state if you're going with same pace. So you have to be retrospect, and these kind of retrospect are not important. You have to do the team retrospective, because these kind of retrospects you need to do with your stakeholders, with your product owner, with your leadership. Like our backlog is growing very fast, but our rate of delivery is very slow. So how we can achieve? Should we introduce one more team? Should we introduce 1 or 2 more developers to just increase these things? So those kind of action items we can take from these. That's why I'm saying this is a very important metrics for leadership and for for the management. Now, another thing is these kind of numbers. You can say the lead time. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between lead time and cycle time? This is one of the interview questions.
Time it took from like backlog refinement and when it actually started the development.
Yes. So this is lead time means when you actually start spending some time on that. When you actually start refinement or also that's a lead time, and when you're finishing that item, that is your lead time. Cycle time is when you get the information, that initiative. Like like suppose today you met with your client or stakeholders, and they says we need to add another payment options in our app. So you just start the discussions. They said, okay, this is what we are expecting in the future. So the day you create that action items, okay, we have to implement this new feature, your cycle time starts. Might be after a month or after 2 months, you are actually spending time, you're grooming that item. But your cycle time is when you get that item created in your backlog, and now when you're delivering. So your cycle time calculates from the day you get the information and from the day you're delivering the done state. So always cycle time is more than the lead time, right? So that's important questions and generally come in the interviews. So our goal is to minimize both of them. When the expectations of our clients or our stakeholders is our lead time and cycle time should be minimum. Like if your client asks you to add a new payment option in the month of April, how quickly you are completing that requirement and your delivery. That's your cycle time. So on the basis of your past deliveries, you can calculate the average cycle time of the team and average lead time of the team. And according to that average, we are taking some actions how we can reduce that lead time and cycle time. So that's the goal of the organizations, where we say, okay, our lead generally they ask, okay, what is your lead time? What your team's lead time? You will say my team's lead time is 10 days. So that means once they start working on any item, within the 10 days, they will deliver that. So that's your lead time. Now, what is cycle time
They
of
will
your
deliver that, or once they will start working in those 10 days.
no, how you calculate lead time is when they start working and when they're done complete.
Okay.
Now this done is depend on the definition. For some teams, the definition done means once they release for the client, but might be that feature is not enabled for the actual customers. But for them, it's delivered. It's on the production, but it's not enabled. That will not calculate as a lead time. So lead time means but the day they delivered and the day they start, the difference is lead time. So you say my team's lead time is 10 days. My team's cycle time is 15 days. So they get a new initiative, new idea, but because of the current priorities, they can't start working on the same day. They take some 5 days and 6 days of time, and then accordingly they will prioritize, and then they will start working on that. So when you are presenting in the new client, so generally these kind of discussions happening when you are approaching a new client. They will say, okay, if your lead time is 15 days, so but I need my product to be complete in 3 months, then how you will do it? Can you minimize this lead time for me to 5 days? Can I get the delivery of each new feature in 5 days? Then according to the requirement, you will investigate and then you will say, is it possible or is it not possible? The kind of process you have from refinement to the development to the deployment to the release, is it possible to do everything in 5 days? You know the whole process of your organizations, then you can come. Like in my case, it's not possible to come down from 15 to 5, but I will give him surety, will come down to 10. How we can do this? Do we need to increase the team members? And accordingly, it will definitely impact the budget. So accordingly, we will communicate with the stakeholders. That's how this lead time and cycle times are really important when you're discussing with your client and with your stakeholders. So these are the important metrics which are really required. Now there are few metrics which comes at the team level. The velocity we are definitely using at the team level. The another one which comes as a burn down chart and burn up chart. What is the difference between burn down and burn up?
Chetan, do you have any data for this, or how this graph came for you? Any
Sorry,
data regarding this, the picture? How did you get this data? Like, I mean, how do you arrange this data? Is there any table to get this graph?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what tools you are using. So definitely all the tools you will see the cumulative flow diagram. I know in Azure they have, in Jira they also have. Or you can just fetch the data, you can put it in Excel and then you can also draw.
Like from a status point of view, it's like ready for development. That is realization, and in verification is work in progress, and done is done. That's how we can create this graph, right? And backlog data is backlog data.
That's what I'm saying. Each definition is different for different companies. So for some of them, definition done means when the actual project is, if you are working on your own applications, like suppose if you are working on e-commerce, let's say you're working Amazon. So for the Amazon, the done means when your feature is on the production and actually the customer start using. That could be the definition done for them. But when you're working for Amazon as an external client, so you're working an external development team, they ask you to work on certain features, you complete on that features. Now from your side, it's complete. Now it's under observation for Amazon. And might be after 2 months, they are planning to release that. So you can't consider that time under your lead time or cycle time, because for you committed something to Amazon, you deliver to the Amazon. Now it's up to Amazon when they are going to release with the real customers. So depend on the scenario of the companies and the projects, the definition is different. But when you're creating these kind of data, if you are using any Kanban board, by default, even if you're using Jira, in Jira you will see the cumulative flow diagram. If you're using Azure, I think Azure also have cumulative flow diagram. Just search with the cumulative flow diagram and then they will give you this data. Where you have to decide what the range of times you really want the data. Accordingly, they will show you. And what are the fields you really want? Do you really want verification in this? Do you really want realization in this? Or you only want backlog and in progress and done? So according to those status, you can create it. So that also varies differently. If you're searching cumulative flow diagram in Google, you will see different kind of metrics. But everywhere you will see these kind of trends. Might be these words are different, but this trend is similar. Okay, we were talking about burn down and burn ups. What is the difference?
Burn down, I remember like how much stories are left to how much stories has consumed. You can say I have 50, and now after 2 days maybe 30 are left. So this is burn down. Burn up, I think this burn up is like opposite of burn down, you can say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is no difference. It's the same how we are looking at the graph.
Oh, yes.
When you are looking at the burn down, so you said, okay, my team committed 30 story points on day 1 of the sprint. So our target is to burn the work, and at the end of the sprint, that should be 0. That means all the 30 story points should be burned down, and they will deliver. So that's the burn down. Now, if you're looking at the burn up, your team is having 30 story points, and you are starting with 0. What they delivered? They delivered 0 at the day 1.
Okay, correct.
Okay, after day 5, they delivered 10 story points. After day 8, they delivered 20 story points. So how much work they delivered, and the goal is to deliver 30 story points. Yes. So that's how you're looking. So it's just the same, right? The goal is also same. Now, how you're looking the data, you just reverse the graph. That's the only difference. Otherwise, there is no difference in the burn up and burn down. If you are using burn up, that's absolutely fine. If you're using burn down, that's also absolutely fine. But the goal at the end of the sprint, that should become 0. If you are looking burn down, if you're looking burn up, at the end of this, there should be what you committed. If it's committed 30, then it should be 30. That's it.
Chetan, we can see this in Jira somewhere, right?
Yes, Jira will by default, it will give you the burn down and burn up for each boards. I can't show you here because it's a recorded session and I right now have only my client Jira and that's under NDA, so I can't show you. Otherwise, I can, but I will see if I can create something and I will show you. Or what I can do is I can quickly search on the Google and then let's. I will show you the real how it looks in Jira. So this is Jira's burn down. You can see here, right? So they committed 50 and they are targeting to deliver 0. And this gray line says the ideal. Ideal means on the day of, if they committed 50, then they're expecting every day they're delivering 555 story points. So this is your ideal line. Why you see the flat? Because it's a holiday, Saturday, Sunday. Right? So that's why you can see this, how it looks. So this is the expectation. Like if you're looking after 4 days and 5 days, then this red line should be near to this gray line, somewhere here or somewhere here. That means your team is doing good. But here you can see this is a flat line. They only burn something here. And then it's again a flat line. And then they add something here. Increase means they descope. They add more work. Then they decrease, continuously doing, decreasing. But after that, there is no decrease for these 2 days. And then you can see if this is your Monday is your end of the sprint, they might be they only deliver this much. Somewhere around 5 story points are not delivered. So that's how you can see it. This is the expectations. This is your ideal line. And here you're delivering near to your ideal line. So this is absolutely fine. But what we are expecting is there should be very minimum ups. That means there should be minimum scope changes. But if your team is continuously going up, down, that means their team is not going good. There are a lot of scope changes. So that's how we're looking at it. We'll show you the burn up as well. This is burn up. They start with 0 and they are targeting like say 35. So this is again the ideal gray line. And this red line should be near to this gray line, but you can see this red is, this green. Green is completed work. So they started here and they are going near to this. So this is absolutely fine. And this is a scope change. Did they have any scope changes? Yes. Here they committed this much, but they increased more stories. So you can see there is a scope change. Then they here they deprioritize the scope down. Then again it's increase. So that's how you're looking the burn up and burn down. You will see these things in the Jira. Okay, now any questions on or any specific thing on metrics? Otherwise, we will move to the next topic.
No.
Okay, then let's move to the next topic, which is this. Scrum Master's roles and responsibilities. I will share you this link. You can also open this. We'll not do any activity right now. We'll only just go through what we are expecting, right? So this is the responsibilities of Scrum Master. What we are expecting. Implement project management best practices. That's one of the responsibility. When you are working as a Scrum Master, your primary goal is to make sure the best practices of the organizations for the team, best practices of agile principles are implemented in the right way. Similarly, all the parties, like when we say all the parties means all the team members, we're including product owners, including development team, including if there is another third-party dependencies we have, everything is on track and they are informed, aligned, they have a better communication. So there are similarly, there are few more. What I want you guys to just read all these responsibilities and the roles as well. So the Scrum Masters have a role on towards different like what is the response roles of a Scrum Master toward the product owner? What is the coordination between Scrum Master and product owners is required? So you will see here, this is Scrum Master and product owners coordination. So when the Scrum Master is doing with the product owner, is make sure the product owner is having the proper refined backlog. If not, he will helping the product owner to make sure on time he or she participating on all the refinement sessions. If team needs anything, they will easily reach out to the product owner. The backlogs prioritization is also important. It should be aligned with what is the roadmap we have, what is the release cycle we have. So if your product owner is lacking, the Scrum Master is helping the product owner to be aligned on those things. And then the events, whatever the Scrum events we have, where we need the product owners, like high level refinement, where we need a product owner, and then the certain senior members we need to just break down those features or new ideas and initiatives. So that's the expectations of the Scrum Masters toward product owner. The next is expectations of the Scrum Masters towards the development team. The important part of the Scrum Masters toward the development team is to support your team member wherever they are stuck, wherever they blow, they need, they are facing some kind of impediments. Now there is a very common confusing line where says Scrum Master is here to remove the impediments for the team. Scrum Master is not here to remove the impediments. Scrum Master is here to help the team to remove the impediments. So that's a small difference between both the lines. What some the team members, organizations who are not well trained or educated, what they will say, if there is any blockers, what developer will do, they will say, okay, this item I'm blocked, and until unless my Scrum Master is not unblocking this, I can't proceed. This should not be the attitude. Now, what should be the attitude of the team? I am blocked. I need an assistance. I need to reach out to a certain team member. Now, if you are not able to directly communicate, you can reach out to the Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master will make sure you will have a proper communication channel so that you will unblock. So what Scrum Master did is not directly getting the information from the third party and giving the developer. No, Scrum Master is just making sure to just there is a proper communication channel set between the third party and between the developers. So they will communicate and they will do that. Until or unless we are doing and saying I'm the Scrum Master, I will remove your blockers, then your team will not learn, they will not improve, they will not be in a full stack independent teams. The goal of a Scrum Master is to take your team towards independence, where they can take the decision by themselves. If they are blocked, they know whom they have to reach out, they will directly communicate. They will not wait to the Scrum Master for this. So that kind of a communications the Scrum Master should set up with the development team. Then there is another one is when we have a certain backlog, we have a certain priority of the backlog. Make sure your team is also following coding. So you have a sprint backlog where you have 10 items. Now you know the first 3 items are very critical. So make sure your team is prioritizing and working on those 3 items first, instead of working something else which is at the bottom of the sprint. So these kind of things where we need a more communication between the Scrum Master and between the teams. If some of the team members, they are new, if they are lacking, then it's Scrum Master's responsibility to coach your team to make sure they are understanding these small processes, what is required to be giving the 100% commitment and 100% delivery. Now, another thing which we are expecting from Scrum Masters towards the development team is the constant coaching. Now, you know your team is doing good, but every time there is one common point coming in the retrospective. And you know, to just get rid of that particular issues, the action item is your team needs some kind of a training. It's your responsibility as Scrum Masters to be arranged continuous learning sessions for your team so that they will be never forget what is the Scrum values, what are the Scrum Agile 12 principles we have. So all these things, trainings, constant guidance is required from the Scrum Masters to all the team. And the another thing is facilitation. When we have a certain ceremonies in Scrum, which we discussed in our last session, make sure your team is following those ceremonies. They are participating. It's not like that each and every time your Scrum Master is leading and deriving those. No, you have to be make sure your team is self independent. They're full stack where they can say, if my Scrum Master is not available, any of your team member can take the role of Scrum Master. They will say, okay, today I will lead the meeting. Let's take an example of daily stand-up meeting. It's not a Scrum Master's responsibility to every day share the screen and then ask each every team member, please share your update. No. But what is the role of Scrum Master is to educate your team and make sure you will give your team a certain level of independence where every time they will say, okay, today I want to lead this daily setup meeting and I will share the screen and I will go through with the whole DSM process. When you have a refinement, someone else will take care of the ownership and they will derive the refinement. It's not every time they should be depend on the Scrum Master. Until unless Scrum Master is not joining the call, we will not start. No, we will start the meeting. What Scrum Master will do, if you are in the early stage of the team, where the team is just new, you have to take care of all the ceremonies. But after some time, after 6 months, 3 months, you will start slowly get out of this facilitator role and make sure your team members are taking that responsibility from you. So in the future, if you're going on a 1 month leave or 2 months leave, you don't need to put in a replacement Scrum Master. No, if you're coaching your team on constant basis, your team can still survive without a Scrum Master for a month or two. So that kind of empowerment a Scrum Master should provide the team. So that's the another responsibilities we have for the Scrum Masters toward the team. It's not your responsibility to facilitate. This is very important line. You have to all have to learn, and you all have to make sure when you're giving the interviews and or when you're starting with a new team, you will be focusing on that part. It comes as your role under your expectations from your role, but that also depends. It's new team, you will definitely do that. If you're doing the same thing for 3 months, 6 months, start giving this responsibility to any of other your team so that you're removing the dependency on it. Now, these are the responsibilities of Scrum Masters toward the development team. Now, the another thing comes is responsibilities of Scrum Masters toward the organization. Now, that is also important part where most of the Scrum Masters are failing because they are only focusing on a certain teams. They will say, my priority is to what my team is committing and to deliver this. No, that's not only your priority. The additional thing is you have some responsibility toward the organizations as well. Your organization also have some roadmap plans for this whole year. You will make sure you're also implementing those things with your team. If they want to be expand in the number of teams for the same project for the same client, you also work toward that. You will create more leaders in your team, more enablers, so that in the future, after 3 months and 6 months, if you're creating 2 teams out of that 1 team, there are team members who can take care of that ownership. So those kind of alignment with the organization goal and with the team's goal is the Scrum Master's responsibility. Another thing which comes toward the leadership is to give the constant update and check on your team's performance, on your delivery rate with your leadership. That alignment is really important. If you are working in a silo with your team only and you're not aligning with your leadership, then after a certain time, you might getting the pushback from your leadership. But if you're constantly connecting with your leadership and you're constantly sharing what is your team is facing, what are the issues your team is facing, what information, what support your team is expecting from the organizations, if you are also focusing toward those things, in the future, if there was a situation where your team is completely out of track, your leadership will help you, they will support you, they will understand, and they will help to create a relevant action items, how we can get rid of those kind of situations. So those are the responsibilities of a scrum masters toward the organization. And another thing comes is to make sure individuals, team members' performance is also you will at least contribute. I know it's not a scrum master's responsibility to look into their appraisals and something, but if some of your team members is really lacking, it's scrum master's responsibility to support your team, to help them, to guide them to get the proper coaching. Let's take an example. One of your team members is struggling with some kind of a new technology, some new backend technology. So your this particular team member is struggling. What you will do is you will just connect with that team member one-on-one, try to understand what kind of need, what kind of support the team members require. If they need any coachings, training, certifications, then you will coordinate with your leadership and then you will make sure your team member will get those things. If they need support from any senior team members, you will just set up pair programming for those that particular team member. And after a certain time, after a month or 2 months, you can do again a one-on-one, and you will get to know if your team is improved. So these kind of small things, which is not comes under the Scrum guide. But if you really want to become a good Scrum master or a leader, you have to be spend equal amount of time on that part as well. That's why I always say is to facilitate the Scrum ceremonies is only the 10% of the Scrum Master role. The remaining 90% of these small things, which is we are not bothering, which we should bother, which should spend time. So that's about the Scrum Master's roles and responsibilities toward the all these different roles. Then we have the focus, where the Scrum Masters would focus. Most of the things we already discussed, like the transparency, make sure any decisions which is related to team is openly decided by the team. If you are doing any kind of process change, you will also coordinate with the team. You will also try to understand their feedback before doing any kind of changes. So the transparency should be there. It's not like that you discuss with one of your manager and then say, okay, from tomorrow onward, we are changing the daily Sunday meeting time from morning 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. You should check with your team, guys, why you want to move from 9 to 11. What are the issues you're facing at the 9 o'clock? Is your team is comfortable if you're moving from 9 to 11? What you will get the inputs from team, that also equally important, instead of listening from one manager and doing the change. If your manager says, sorry, at 9 o'clock I have a conflict, can you just move the daily center to 11? I'm only available at 11. Then instead of moving the meeting from 9 to 11, you can ask your project manager, it's absolutely fine. You don't need to be connect every day. Whenever you have time, you can just connect. But 9 o'clock is the best suitable time for the team. I don't want to change it. So those kind of a transparency we need. Self-organize, which we already talked about. Your team members should be capable to take care of any responsibilities of any roles what they have within the Scrum team. Then the protecting the team, this is also the thing. When your team members are struggling, you will make sure you will provide sufficient information support for them. If some developer is stuck, they need a guidance on the technical part, you will arrange the technical guidance. If they are stuck because there are some third party tools access they need or the license they need, you will coordinate with your finance team or your leadership and make sure you're arranging those things. So those kind of things you need. Empiricism, this is really important part for any team. How you are empowering your team, what kind of a culture you're setting with the team. And similarly, Scrum values we already talked about: focus, openness, respect, courage, and commitment. We talked about in previous session, right? Make sure your team members are aligning those Scrum values. If they are deviating from those 5, you can arrange a small 15-minute session in every 3 months and something. Guys, this is the Scrum values and focus, and where are we lacking, where we need more alignment. And this remove blockers is equal, we already talked about if someone is stuck in this. This is the focus areas where the Scrum Master should focus. Any queries, or should we move to the product owner? We'll not spend much time on the product owner and the development team because it's not a product owner workshop, it's majorly Scrum Master, but you should also aware of what the Scrum product owners are really doing. So product owner's main focus is towards the managing these three responsibilities. The first thing is managing the backlog. Whatever backlog we have, that should be prioritized, that should be continuously refined, and only timely basis we will check, is it really aligned with our timelines? What are quarterly goals you have? What are yearly goals you have? What are the release you have? Make sure that backlog is aligned and refined and prioritized according to those things. That's the primary responsibility of the product owner. Second responsibility is release management. When you have 100 items in your backlog and you have your release in every month or every sprint or every quarter, that depends on company to company. Make sure that proper release plan is there. You will constantly checking with your product owner, are we really meeting that release timeline, or are we behind, or are we ahead? So those kind of a communication, we should do that. But that's not a Scrum Master responsibility to take care of this release. This is the product owner's responsibility, because they know what is the MVP product. According to the release, according to the MVP understanding, they are prioritizing and deprioritizing items. The third and most important part is stakeholder management, because you have to work on 100 items, and is your stakeholders also aligned on those 100 items? Are they need any change in those 100 items? Are they really want to deprioritize something, or they want to add new features? So that communication should be there. Suppose you release something in the last month. Now your stakeholders are really using that particular feature, but they also have a lot of feedback. So it's product owner's responsibility to just collect those feedback from the stakeholders, from the client, and convert those feedback into the new requirements in the backlog, and then prioritize according to the criticality. So these are the three important parts we are expecting from the product owner roles. Now the last thing what we are expecting from the development team is these things. They are self-organized, like they should not be dependent on any specific role. The day of sprint 1, they committed something, until the day of day 10 or day 20, whatever is the sprint cycle you have, your team member should be capable to work without getting any and expecting any support from anyone. If they really need, then those things should be discussed and highlighted. That's a self-organized team, where they can organize everything. They can do a discussion between the two team members, like there is a backend developer, there is a front-end developer. Now within the sprint, you have to work on both the things. They should have a better communication channel. Both should discuss. It's not like every time they're waiting for the Scrum Master, or they're waiting for a specific ceremony like the daily sender. If anyone blocked, they will say, okay, I'm blocked, I need a support. So that's meaning of self-organization. Then there is a design, UX, testing, delivery, development. These are the different focus areas we have. What we are expecting, and what's the meaning of the full stack team member is, full stack team member doesn't mean your each and every team member knows each and every aspect. Like your each team member should know about the UX, about the testing, about the design, about the no. But at least, definitely they have expertise in a particular area, but they also understand at least the basic of the other side. Like if I'm a backend developer, I know I'm having expertise in the backend work, but I should also understand the basics of the front end, because my backend work is going to integrate with the front end. So that is the meaning. If my front end developer is not there, I can also start taking care of the basic work, which is really helping to continuously delivering the work. So that's the understanding we have. If you have a QA, it doesn't mean your QA is only take care of the QA. Sometimes they can also understand, they can also sit with the developer, they can also helping the developer to think a better scenarios when they are developing, to just debug their code, try to help them how they can improve, how they can taken care of them. So that's the meaning of full stack team, where they can support each other, and they can, if there is one person is not available, the rest of the team member can take care of that work, and they can also still deliver. These kind of focus areas we have for a development team. Now, anything related to these three roles and their focus areas and their responsibilities? Any queries? This is all about the roles and responsibilities of a whole Scrum team.
It's not very specific. I just want to, in the conversation you said that self-dependent, like that's one thing, right? So let's just say after 6 months down the line, the team is continuously working, and after so do projects let go of Scrum Master eventually because the team is self-aligned? And then what happened to a Scrum Master if this team is self-aligned?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very interesting question. This is generally people having the fear.
Because say for example, I took a 15-day break, or I am away for a year for a met leave. Let's just say in our case, it's the met 6 months thing, right? And in those 6 months, though two things can happen. Either the team can continues working without me, or they might find a replacement who is focused on that particular team. So when I come back, either I get a new project to work on, or they might do here and there, whatever it is. So what is the growth plan for a Scrum Master, or how to handle such situation?
I mean, see, again, what we are thinking, what is like really important for the Scrum Master, that we have to understand that aspect. When we say a self-independent team, so that means they can take care of the ceremonies of the team, right? But still, suppose they are doing everything without Scrum Masters, but how you can help them to support them to improve more, to learn more. So there is no limit, right? To be to and none of the team is perfect. So as a Scrum Master, if your team is really capable to take care of all the roles and responsibilities of a Scrum Master, you should not bother on that part. Now if they're doing good, you will focus on how we can improve the team's performance. What are the right now the pain areas of the team? Just trying to identify those things and work toward those things. Forget about the ceremonies and constantly check, constantly part of those ceremonies and see if your team is still doing in the way what we are expecting, and if they are lacking. So that how it comes, right? With your experience, you all start playing the coaching role, the agile coach that comes after the Scrum Master role, right? So once you are doing the same kind of a work, you are not bothered of any of these things because you are coaching your team to take care of these things, and your primary goal is training, the coaching, training of organizations, training of the product owners, training of the other project teams. If one of your team is doing great, what you can do is you can just replace with any junior Scrum Master. Now that junior Scrum Master can work on this well-established team, and you can switch with the any complex team which is struggling with the current Scrum Masters, and then you can help that team to grow. And we always have these kind of a scope within the organization where you can do that. So either you're going on a maternity or you're going on a 1 month break or 2 month break, it's absolutely fine. How you're utilizing that after once you're coming back, how you're utilizing your new role, that's also important. If you're still getting the same team, 6 month time period is a very long period. If they replace you by some different Scrum Master, then definitely there is something which is changed. You have to observe, is that change is really going in a good direction, or is there is some other impact? If there is some other impact which is not expected, you have to be focused and you have to work on that side. Or if team is going good with that new Scrum Master, then you don't need to join that team. You can join some other teams where you can be more valuable, right? But these kind of things are not in our hand. This depend on the organization's leadership where they want to be fit you after 6 months, right? So we don't have to bother on that part. Okay, anything else?
Game time.
Okay, so we are done with the 2 topics, what we decided for the day. Now, if you have anything else, we can discuss. Otherwise, we can go for some fun activities and fun part. Anyone?
Yeah, Chetan, about the certifications. Can
Okay.
we